empowerment. The generation born in the 80s is not 25 years plus, 20 to 25 years plus. And they have been empowered by communication as never before. It is in this scenario that Europe finds itself completely hamstrung. It doesn't know where to go. The European powerhouse has got over-centralized. When they talk of Eurozone, it virtually means Germany will run the rest of the world. They are divided. Farid Zakaria wrote a beautiful article saying, it's time everybody said thank you to Germany. The Guardian hit back by saying, it's time Germany said thank you to everybody else for making it so powerful because of the common currency. And then it went on to say, Angela Merkel is going to achieve more with the Eurozone budget than Hitler could with his armies. She will rule Europe. It is in this mood that Europe and European politicians, including British politicians, have attacked tax planning as the single biggest evil. Why have they attacked tax planning? They have attacked tax planning because they are countries which house consumers, not producers. Because they are countries in which multinationals originate but don't pay tax. Recently, there has been a huge rumpus in United Kingdom about the fact that the rich don't pay taxes. It is bound to happen. Britain is known for its austerity post-World War II. How powerful were the Brits and the Europeans, how they came out of World War II. It's a lesson worth learning. But that's not the generation today. The generation today is a much softer generation who has been born into prosperity. They've been born into a society where getting a job was a given. And if you didn't get a job, social security was a given. They didn't have to strive for this. They were born into a society where basics of life were taken for granted. For the first time, they are seeing redundancies as never before. There is bound to be resentment. In an article in 2012, The Guardian wrote, at the other end of the spectrum, though things are going swimmingly, when it was talking about job cuts and austerity, the richest 1,000 people of Britain have seen their wealth increase by 155 billion since the crisis began. More than enough to pay off the whole government deficit of 119 billion at a stroke. And these rich are 0.01% of the British population. So naturally there is anger. There is anger because on the one hand there are redundancies, there are layoffs. Those countries find themselves where they are because 25 years back Britain decided to switch to a service provider country rather than a manufacturing country. Over 80%, over 75% clearly of their gross domestic product comes from services. They did wonderfully well when the rest of the world was prospering. But you can only provide services to the manufacturing sector. When there is a downturn in the manufacturing sector, the first thing it does is cuts back on services. Today they find themselves in a position that they are incapable of running industry. Yes, I use the word carefully, incapable of running industry. Look at two examples. The single largest private employer in the United Kingdom is the Tata Group of India. They call it a reverse colonization. We mock the Tatas in India. Ratan Tata was a revered figure in London. Tatas took Jaguar Land Rover and at the end of the second year of their management turned a £1 billion profit. and this was without any major layoffs. The Brits are eternally grateful to the Tatas. One of the largest employers in Europe is the Mittal Group. They have been able to turn the steel industries of Europe around. Because Europeans have forgotten how to run industry. Why are they reacting the way they are reacting? There are 3 recent examples which have created a huge furor in England. Do we have any such problems? We don't. Let me give you those 3 examples. Starbucks. Starbucks paid 10 million pounds, yes, only 10 million pounds tax in the UK. In an operation, annual operation, which is over 2.8 billion. There was a protest which was published in The Economist. Outside the Starbucks outlets, where people started surrounding the Starbucks outlets saying, we will boycott Starbucks, we will not allow people to go to Starbucks unless they pay income tax. Could you ever believe tax planning could assume a position like this? And one of the placards being carried by one of the ladies spoke the story. It said 74% of the 15 billion tax cuts, that's the tax cuts that the government is having to impose, 74% of the 15 billion tax cuts is being taken from women's income. Naturally, tax planning now is on the front page. Google is the second second company on target of the British tax authorities. Google, which is an American company, has repatriated 200 million, yes, only 200 million to the US in the first 3 quarters of 2012. A multi-billion-dollar enterprise is returning $200 million home. It has paid in US, and you will be startled to hear this figure, $10 million of corporation tax, a company of Google size. There was a recent report by the Trade Unions Congress in UK which said 25 billion annually is lost from tax avoidance. This is made up of 13 billion from tax avoidance by individuals and 12 billion from the largest corporations. How did these figures ratchet up to this level? The UK came up with one circular, very simple circular, which said the date of arrival and the date of departure will not be counted as your stay in the UK. So all the rich hedge fund managers bought homes in Monaco. They made an airport for them called the City Airport. You fly in on a Monday, it's not counted. You fly home on Thursday evening because Friday is what they call dress down Friday. You work from home, you do your stuff on the computer where you do all your writing work. You do meetings only Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So you fly home on Thursday evening, Thursday is not counted. You work the whole week in London and you are residing for 2 days, Tuesday, Wednesday. You can work for 45 weeks and live there for 90 days. One day you miss, you're not a resident in the UK. You take home $1 billion worth of commission, you don't pay tax. You take over 100 million, 200 million, those are the kind of bonuses they get. Yes, they brought prosperity to the UK. Why did UK do it? Not because they had a corrupt regime, but because these people brought billions and billions of dollars worth of business to the UK. Now that things have gone sour, they want to tax these people. Fair enough. We need to learn from what Starbucks said in its defense. And that's where we should begin. Starbucks said, we would rather pay tax in the country where our goods are produced than the country where our goods are consumed. Who do we want to be? The producing country or the consuming country? Can we afford to be the consuming country? Or should we be the producing country? Their notions have changed. In the land of the Duke of Westminster principle, George Osborne now says in his latest speech that aggressive tax planning is morally reprehensible. Prime Minister Cameron in his speech in Davos day before said, I will make, to quote his words, damn sure that multinational firms pay their fair share of tax of UK operations. Why is all this happening? All this is happening because capital has found its way into the most lucrative producing areas. India, let us remind ourselves, has been the beneficiary of mobility of capital. What should India's position be? Let's look at one example. Intel Corporation has opened up in India. Intel, in a statement when it was criticized for not paying taxes in the US, said that we have operations in 30 countries around the globe. The Intel chip is developed at the design center in Oregon. It may be manufactured at a wafer fabrication facility in Ireland, packaged and tested in Malaysia, and then sold to a customer in Australia. Another chip may be designed in Japan, fabricated in Israel, packaged and tested in India, sold in China. We shift, they said, production facilities, and remember this, in response to tax rates. Should we happily then ape the West? Or should we become the attractive nation? We are repeatedly told, oh, look at what the organization of the OECD has done. The OECD came out with this famous report, the harmful effects of tax competition, or harmful tax competition, something like that, in 1998. Post-Bush, what did it finally end up about? Something which is indisputable, that there should be no black holes. You must not have opacity. You must have transparency. Who is asking for transparency? Maximum, the US. Why? Because US taxes its citizens globally, wherever you may be. Their rules on expatriation is so enormous that even former US citizens who have moved outside the US are taxed if the reason for movement is not genuine. That's how the US believes in taxing its people. So US wants information, and yet, to quote Professor Philip Baker, who I had the privilege of working with in the Vodafone case, said, the biggest tax island is a small island called Manhattan Island. They don't give information to anybody. If you're not a US citizen and you manage to get your money in Manhattan, you're completely safe. No country in the world will be given information by Manhattan banks. That is why they say that a lot of the Latin drug money is in Manhattan banks. So, everybody has double standards, but we unfortunately seem to be feeling, oh look, the land of the Duke of Westminster is now going the other way, so we must follow them there. In India, we have always drawn the line. Nobody compels you to arrange your affairs so as to pay the maximum amount of tax. Please look at India. We are not a land of multinationals. We are not yet a place where our homegrown corporations shift monies abroad. Homegrown corporations pay taxes in India. They generate employment in India. They invest in India.